Welcome to the Oberst by Crown Private podcast. The goal of this podcast is to offer investors and entrepreneurs insights and practical advice on how to dramatically improve the kinds of deals they invest in and the returns that they get. My name is James Evenson. I am one of the partners at Crown Private. For those who do not yet know Oberst, we are about three things. We're about people, places, and deals. Our membership and community is built up of like-minded yet unique and adventurous individuals and family offices, people who invest in all kinds of deals, a wide variety of deals, from early stage companies to established private equity opportunities. We do so with a proven formula of due diligence, structuring, and management. This July, we are hosting an event for seasoned investors in Panama City, Panama. This will be from the 15th to the 20th, where in addition to exploring the sights and sounds of Panama, we will be digging deep into investment opportunities as well as residency, taxation, incorporation, and a wide variety of other topics. If that is something that is of interest to you, please head over to obristinvest.com for more details. Obrist Invest is obristinvest.com. In this podcast, I will interview Kent Davis of Panama Equity. Kent is originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. He's a graduate of James Madison University. Kent moved to Panama in 2007 and started Panama Equity in 2008. He currently holds the position of managing director. Kent resides in Panama City with his wife and his two sons. Hi, Kent, and welcome.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. I appreciate having you with us. So I've asked Kent to speak about investing in Panama. Caveat is that his primary focus is residential real estate. What I've come to know about Kent, though, is that he really has his feet on the ground and understands investing overall in Panama. So we're very fortunate to have you here with us, Kent, and we look forward to having you at the event coming up soon as well. So I'm just going to dive right into the questions, and we'll see where we go from there. What brought you to Panama, and why did you stay?
Okay, well, again, thanks for the intro, James. I came to Panama in 2007. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. 5 years out of college, I had worked for the same company, and I always sort of was looking to do something abroad. I lived in Spain during college for 6 months, so I had a Spanish background, or at least a base. So I was looking to relocate somewhere, to be an expat, whether that was Costa Rica, Venezuela, or Panama. Costa Rica, I felt like I'd kind of missed the bus. You know, that was really boomed in like the 90s. Venezuela, obviously, thank goodness, I kind of dodged a bullet. And when somebody mentioned Panama, I started looking into it, and I was like, wow, like that could be interesting. And as I was in the course of my research, learning more about the country, I actually started a company from Atlanta, an online directory of bars and restaurants and strip clubs and concerts. Idea being that when I moved to Panama, I would have something to approach business owners with. And yeah, I mean, I quit my job, broke up with my girlfriend, and got a ticket to Panama, and that was 2007. And fortunately, you know, finished product, Panama Equity, which, as you mentioned, I started in 2008. Wife and two kids, Panamanian wife. I met her here after being single for a couple of years in Panama, which was fun. And yeah, I've stayed because I like what I do for work, which is important. I think my family is getting a good education. I feel safe here. And obviously, you know, when you're raising young kids, it is nice to have some family support, whether that's on mom or dad's side. And actually, we get it from both because my folks fly down here on occasion. My mom's in Richmond, Virginia. So yeah, that's what brought me here. And that's why I've decided to stay.
Well, I think you have good reasons for staying. You know, your story is very similar to others that I've heard from folks who've chosen Panama as their place of residence. So it meets a lot of criteria for having a really healthy and safe life, but also being able to thrive. And for an entrepreneur like yourself, remarkable opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like you said, it just checks a lot of boxes. You know, a lot of our clients are based in this side of the world, although we're starting to see more Asian clients. But so for folks like I for example, I run a group, and James, we've got to get you guys down here for the next meeting. We do it twice every month. It's called the Panama Business Club.
Right.
We had our last night. Yeah, I mentioned it. So we had the event last night. We probably had about 70 people, and really just from all over the world, total mix of sectors. Like, you know, we had some governments there, we had some family offices there, we had some lawyers there, and just really interesting people, literally from all over the world, that came to Panama for like the same like 4 or 5 reasons, you know. And it creates a culture of like-minded individuals, and just a nice place to, you know, live and work, and in some cases visit. You know, people plant multiple flags. So, you know, when they come down to Panama for maybe the we call them snowbirds, you know,
Sure.
No, yeah. So I'm looking forward to having you back down here and having your folks checking out Panama to sort of get a sense of the lay of the land, because it really is super, super diverse for such a small country and a tiny city. I mean, it's only 1 million people. It's really very, very diverse, people from all over the world.
Right. Well, how would you describe the overall prospect for foreign investment in Panama?
Well, first of all, foreigners, I think, have the benefit of the doubt when dealing with Panamanians, in that Panamanians are very open to foreign investment. They sort of give some instant credibility. If you come from overseas, maybe you might know something or have an angle that I, as a Panamanian, haven't thought of. So the doors are generally open when you can get the introductions. So in that sense, it's fairly easy, and it's such a small country. Again, with 1 million people, it's like, I could say I'm 2 degrees away from pretty much anybody in this country. And that's taken, 10 or 12 years to build relationships. But so you've got that angle where you can get in front of decision makers very quickly versus having to go through 4 or 5 gatekeepers and chase people down. It's also pretty easy to do due diligence because it's such a small country. You can ask the right people about this person who you're thinking about investing in or investing with, or this business, to vet them pretty quickly. That said, as anyone can appreciate doing business all over the world, there are nuances and eccentricities of both Panamanians and the environment here. You love it or you hate it, a couple of things we can get into that later in terms of what I love. That's almost more of a lifestyle angle. But back to the question about foreign investment in Panama, obviously my advice would be move slowly, do your homework, make sure you're well advised. Sometimes, for example, with lawyers, I think we're getting into a little bit too much detail, but at this point, I assume we're going to talk about real estate.
We will be shortly, absolutely. You'll have, just go with your train of conscience, though.
Okay, cool. So it's the short answer, James, is Panama is very open to doing business, receptive. Sometimes people can get a bit sloppy here. So you need someone to dot your I's, cross your T's. And it's not an intention of being sort of conniving. It's just sort of loose, So you have to ask the same question 5 different ways, and sometimes 2 or 3 different people. And you might get 4 or 5 different answers, and then it's a matter of compiling and make your best decision. But at the end of the day, Panama is an interesting place to invest in. Like any place, you just have to do your homework, move slowly. And, yeah.
So what do you think are the top sectors for investment within the country?
Sure. So, the Panamanian economy, of course, you've got transport and logistics, canal being one of the main drivers of the economy, and all the surrounding the businesses surrounding that. You've got banking, you've got the service sector, you've got mining, which is starting to come up the last 5 years. We've got a Canadian company that put a bunch of money into the ground, and they're going to be starting to pull copper out, which will be a nice little injection into the economy for the next, well, who knows how long, but they're talking about 20 or 30 years. So you've got different sectors. Obviously, anyone that comes to Panama brings a certain level of knowledge about a specific industry that they know about. So that would be my general advice, which would be to just sort of focus on maybe what you already know, because then you could approach it from a different angle that a Panamanian might not have already thought of, or somebody doing business here locally. I mean, we're late adapters in Panama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a huge consumer market. There's only 4 million people. You know, average income is, let's say, household $1,500 a month. So it's not like this China or I mean, it's tiny, right? It's 4 million, but it's also easy to maneuver in. So sectors, obviously real estate is very interesting because we've had a boom back, say 5 or 6 years ago. No, really, it started in 2005. So that would be 14 years ago, and probably peaked around 2010 and has been coming down and sort of flatlined for the last couple of years. So that's obviously that's my sector, and we can get into that a little bit later if you want to.
But we will very shortly. Yep.
Cool. But yeah, no. So that's sort of a general picture of the drivers of the economy and the interesting sectors. And you know, I mean, there's people that have been hard hit by the economy the last couple of years. This current president, a lot say that he's not really been very effective. His 5-year term is getting ready to end.
Right.
We've got elections on Sunday. All the candidates are middle of the road, so it will be interesting. Everybody's just sort of, there's like this pent up sense of, all right, we need a change. So the timing is interesting. The timing is very interesting in Panama right now, both what's happening outside of the world and of course what's happening down here.
Gotcha. So key sectors would be mining is new, logistics. We also know the wood industry is significant with teak in particular. Are there a lot of exports from Panama?
They're starting to be. In fact, at the Panama Business Club, we had the lady from Open Blue, which they're exporting a fish to China. I think it's called cobia. They're, aquaculture. And that is the Panamanian success story, because they just within the last week got all of the different permits. They've been working on it for 3 years. Panama's negotiating with China for a free trade agreement, which could open the doors. But really already we've got some trickling of exporting. I mean, wood could be one of them for sure. Typical, our biggest exports right now are shrimp, melons, scrap metal, which I don't know if China's taking that anymore because they're not taking it from the U.S.
They certainly aren't. No.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's agriculture is a very interesting sector, mainly because it's been hard hit. It's been under prioritized. So yeah, ag is very interesting. Timber has always been teak farms, and then you get into coffee. I mean, Panama's got a big, robust coffee industry that's just starting to export to big markets like China. So yeah, it's an interesting time, and at least in my 12 years, all of this has happened pretty recently, and no one knows how it's going to play out because the Chinese are gigantic. So if that market is massive. So
I think though Panama is courting much more of the world than just China, though we certainly see a lot of China influence and interaction with China right now. Which makes a lot of sense. You referenced that Panama is kind of a latecomer in the world game in terms of import export and industries. But I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. If you look at the location of Panama, maybe it's just the world was a little slow to realize how significant Panama is. It really the center between the North and South America, and just its proximity to everywhere else in the world. Anyway, I think that I'm happy that you all have come to the game, and that Panama definitely has a bright future. Yep. Besides the locals, tell us who invests in Panama, and what's the ratio of individual investors versus institutional investors?
Okay, so you literally get people from all over the world. Of course, Latin America, Venezuela has been a big investor, both on the institutional side, family offices and other private equity. So Venezuela, huge. Europeans obviously are just sort of starting to find out about Panama. They're sort of just getting exposed. North Americans, Canadians and people from the US, we get a lot of investment there for a variety of reasons and in a variety of sectors, all across the real estate spectrum. Harvard, for example, we've got they bought a bunch of land many years ago on an island. I don't know what their angle is. I wasn't involved in that deal, unfortunately, or else we would be speaking from my yacht. But no, so I mean, you've got like the California Pension Fund. You've got some, but it's more individual investors, family offices versus big institutions, because at the end of the day, Panama is still really small. It only attracts, like, just the scope, the deal size is not large enough for the big boys, right? So in that sense, it's not as competitive, which is nice. It keeps out a lot of that big institutional money. But you do have some folks that, emerging market, forestry, those sort of long, almost annuity style, just spitting out a little bit of money over many years.
Right. Actually, I think that's very appealing for individual investors to know that we're not being crowded out by the big guys, the big institutional investors at this point in time. Before we move on to real estate, one last question, just on the general. And by the way, folks, Kent will be speaking at our event in Panama, July between the 15th and 20th, and he'll be speaking on investing in Panama as well as real estate, two different topics, and he'll go into greater detail there as well, but we want to give folks a good overview of both. So my last question, Kent, on general investing, what cautions would you offer us about investing in Panama?
Well, I mean, I alluded to some of them earlier, which is take your time, conduct your due diligence. It's not hard to get the skinny on businesses and individuals in Panama because of how small it is. I would say make sure you have the right team, you're the right quarterback that knows how to just anticipate challenges and sort of safeguard against them. Having a great lawyer is absolutely key. Make sure the lawyer is vetted. I know, James, you guys have, I think, a lawyer also speaking. It's a critical part of any equation in Panama, real estate and any other type of investment. And just know what you're looking for. Go in maybe with having done some research, or, it's sort of like a funnel, right? You start wide and you just narrow in. But yeah, at the end of the day, understand that the market might not always be as transparent, especially the real estate market. Finding statistics and good information is very hard to find. The government has started to prioritize that, but still it's not as robust. And for that matter, businesses aren't always as meticulous as they should be when they weren't ever thinking about bringing outside investors, and now they might be. Gotcha. So yeah, just approach it with a grain of salt, I'd say, like anywhere.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. Well, let's focus in on something that you're absolutely passionate about, residential real estate. By the way, do you cover both residential and commercial, or just residential?
We've been mostly residential. We've closed a few small commercial deals, like, 15-room hotel, done some project finance, helped some developers acquire land and then sort of work with them on the advisory in terms of what they should build, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, my core business has been residential real estate, both on the brokerage side and property management.
Will you please describe for us Panama real estate from an investor's standpoint? You've given us a preview of what from 2000 and I believe 4 or 5 onward has been,
Yep.
and the flow, the growth, and then the drop and the plateauing. Can you speak more about what real estate's like from an investor's standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, just historically, and exactly what you said, James, in terms of the last 15 years, prices are a lot cheaper than they were 10 years ago. And there's some interesting tailwinds that Panama has right now that are worth following. You know, the China story, if it plays out, or when it plays out, let's see. Mining, and just an economy that has been, I mean, most people would be shooting off fireworks with 5-6% GDP, which is what Panama's had the last 5 or 6 years, although I think last year was around 4. But in 2007, 2008, 2009, it was like 10, 12, 13% GDP growth. So, you know, we are in an environment where there's kind of blood on the streets right now. You know, you've had some people that have been trying to sell for the last couple of years. Some people are still in, like any real estate market, sort of la land. They think that they can still get prices from 5 years ago. Maybe they might not be as encouraged to sell because their holding costs are low. You know, in Panama, you've got very low tax regime. You've got very low holding costs in terms of the homeowners association. And I don't say that as a pitch per se. It's more like to know where you're up against with the seller. Right? If he's $1 million asset, if it only costs him, say, well, let's see, $1,200 a month to hold that asset, he might not be extremely motivated unless he has obviously use for that $1 million somewhere else, right? So, you know, you kind of have to identify opportunities, I would say, is and they're out there right now. It's a buyer's market all day long. And like any real estate market, it's cyclical, right? I mean, 8 years ago, it was a seller's market and prices were going up, and it was sort of that boiler room. I don't know if you've seen that movie environment where, you know, you were getting new price lists every day and I was selling over the phone, and it was pretty wild. But now it's opportunistic. And I think a smart client said this once, and I loved it. You know, real estate is not necessarily about location. It's about timing. It's about timing the right deal. You make your money on the buy side. And yeah, I mean, we've got some family office clients that don't want the slow market to end right now because they're still sort of in the acquisition side. And when it will end, nobody really knows, because that's whatever. Nobody has a crystal ball. But no, there's some good things that are happening. But just approach anything with caution. Yeah,
sure.
Ask a lot of questions.
Sure. Well, that's the goal, to ask a lot of questions and make the right decisions. You mentioned family offices are buying. We know individuals are buying. What are they buying?
You know, I mean, as an so you have. Let's talk about the individuals. You have people that are pure investors. You have people that plan on spending some time in Panama, and you have people that are moving to Panama full time, right? It's sort of pretty much those 3 categories. The reason people are moving to, or we can get into that later, but the people that are moving to Panama full time, that's an easy one, right? They need a housing solution.
Sure.
You know, a lot of our individuals, I don't really have, honestly, like a whole lot of investors that have only bought in Panama because of the returns, because the returns are kind of boring right now. Like 3 to 4% net is okay. You know, I mean, that's without pulling in any leverage, but bank financing is not super attractive right now. You know, 6-7% for mortgage, 40 to 50% loan to value. So, you know, the majority of my investors like to come to Panama. You know, they sort of want an excuse or a place to come back to for 3 months out of the year. You know, long term, they think, all right, yeah, I like what's going to happen in Panama. Maybe I'll retire here in 5 years or 10 years. They like the vibe. You know, they come down here, they say, all right, I get the feeling of the city, or I love being at the beach, but I like being able to come into the city, you know, go to the old town at night for dinner. go out to shows, just sort of live a lifestyle. For many, it's less expensive, but for some, it's more expensive. Depends on where you're coming from. Middle America, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, restaurants are definitely more expensive here. Obviously, San Francisco, New York, London, some of the most expensive cities in the world. Panama's much cheaper. But so yeah, that's the lion's share of my investors is guys that like Panama. They want an excuse to come back. Maybe they come back, with the whole family and they want to stay for like a whole month in their place, and then the rest of the year we rent it out. And again, maybe some of them, it's their plan B for retirement, which they're not quite ready for. So they appreciate an income that's more than covering costs. And they also see the potential, especially the guys that come back a few times over the course of, say, 3 or 4 years, and they say, whoa, you guys have a new metro line. Whoa, this neighborhood got totally renovated. They can see it. They can see the writing on the wall. Folks that have invested overseas, other markets, they say, okay, I like, a government that's got, a very healthy debt to GDP ratio where they can keep investing in big infrastructure projects. A government that provides tax incentives for multinationals that are looking to relocate here. Territorial taxation for guys, anybody that's, I guess, not from the U.S., to have their domicile here and continue working abroad. So yeah, so you got those folks, those A, B, and C individual investors, and then family office are almost all about both the tax advantages and the returns, because our family office clients, I'm getting them a bit higher, like 5.5%. That's to buy a middle income multifamily, say 30-unit apartment. We've got 4 or 5 of those under management right now, which we've helped the client acquire, rent out, anywhere from $2 million to $6 million for that type of building. And yeah, like 5, even 6% net. That's okay. That's for real estate, residential real estate around the world. That's all right. And the investment angle that I've been encouraging family office clients, and actually, individuals as well, if it meets their needs, is sell to the kingdom, not the king. In this case, buying those middle income properties that, that just rent out. You're renting those to the waitresses and the teachers and the architects that are just starting their jobs. And then, yes, I could talk for hours on this.
Absolutely. Well, actually, you brought up a really important point. I was thinking about, so I'm remembering 2 months ago when we had dinner with one of your family office clients, and we were talking about the acquisition of multifamily properties for investment purposes. And that's really in line with what a lot of our listeners where their focus is, and our members. It seems that it's not very often that we end up in a group discussion with our members about buying one property. It's usually about buying multifamily properties when we're on the real estate front. But here's the question, and this came up when we were having dinner. So I buy a 30-unit building. Who's going to take care of that for me? I'm somewhere else in the world, and this is really a plug for you, because I know that's part of Panama Equity. So yeah, let's just segue over to that for just a minute and tell me about that. So I bought a 30-unit building for the next 10 years. How am I going to manage it from afar?
Yeah, almost all of our investors live overseas. So we've got a portfolio of, it's probably about 120 properties right now. Actually more than that. So some of those are buildings, some of those are individual properties. Obviously the tenants vary across the spectrum. We've got a $500,000 property that's rented out the head of CMEX, right? That's a totally different angle. That's a guy that, again, purchased a property for his family, comes and uses it when it's empty. Just it's a pure investment for him, but he lives in Venezuela, so he comes and he wants to have it as a plan B. Versus our family office clients come to Panama once or twice a year. That's what we do is property management and administration. So I've got a team. We've got We use a really good software that we implemented actually just last year. We were pure Excel based for the first 10 years. But once we started acquiring some more sophisticated clients, we sort of got, we invested in the systems and the people, full-time accounting, full-time property administration, on site. And yeah, I mean, we run a tight ship. That's the Achilles heel of any property investment is how it's administered. Because it can make or break you. The last thing you want to do is have to worry about it when you are 1,000 miles away, completely out of your control, and just a form of stress. And I get that. In fact, like any of my friends, when they're thinking about investing in other parts of the world, I say, all right, well, find your property manager before you find your property, because those guys are critical. And yeah, I mean, that's totally a part of our service offering and has been forever. But we've just since really instituted some nice systems, polished reports, automated collections processes, really streamlined evictions, knock on wood. They happen.
I think that's a remarkable statement, though, Kent, that I've never heard. Find your property manager first before.
Oh, yeah.
That makes a tremendous amount of sense. And you're right. In other parts of the world, that can be make or break. That you can acquire property and easily lose it or see it degrade, or end up having to spend all of your time living somewhere else in the world and worrying about how to maintain that property. Wow.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, you'll have ample opportunity in July as well to tell us about property management or managing properties for our investors when they acquire. Let's go back to the buyers. What are they? We've already covered what are they buying. So individuals maybe are buying properties for their own personal use or investment properties. And where are they buying? Panama is not a huge country, but you have a number of areas that are popular. So can you hit on a few of those places, those areas?
Sure. I mean, of course, the city. That's sort of the Panama City is the hub. It's where most of the businesses are based. So, anyone that's purchasing a property to rent out to corporations, your low-hanging fruit, if you will, is definitely in the city. A lot less volatile than, say, out at the beach, which is very seasonal. So yeah, I mean, definitely in the city. Certain neighborhoods in the city are more attractive than others based on the seller profile, based on the tenant, the price point. Certain things are moving faster and or more rentable than others. We can get into the fine details either on this call or in July. But yeah, so you've got the city and you've got outside the city. So outside of the city is kind of more lifestyle than investment. Although, the beaches areas are really interesting right now. I would say they're harder hit than the city because you've got a lot of local business owners that have had to sell their weekend spot because they need money to put in their businesses. Panamanians, I've found, God bless them, they're a little short-sighted. Sort of like, and I almost want to, that's terrible to say. Well, or whatever. I mean, they'll tell you the same thing. For the most part, people are short-sighted. They don't see path of progress. They don't see the fact that the new bridge is going to completely open up the beaches area. It's going to be a while. I mean, you got to have some staying power. We're talking 4 or 5 years before 3 new transportation projects are done. The bridge, the next bridge over the canal, and 2 different highway systems, all of which are going to ease the bottleneck going out to the beaches area. So, I mean, man, the beaches area is very interesting. I think they have at least another year or 2 of sort of tough times. So there's not as much pressure to find.
Are you talking about the beaches area that is just on the other side of the canal?
Yeah, that's where it starts, but more so about an hour outside of the city, James.
Okay.
Okay. Coronado. That's very interesting. So yeah, you've got people either out at the beach, and that's more of a lifestyle play. Hey, I want to spend some time out here, Airbnb it. Easy peasy, cover my costs, probably not have a whole lot of yield on top of that, but maybe be able to buy it really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Versus in the city, get squeeze 3 or 4% out of it, keep it rented, corporate rental, retiree, middle income Panamanian, depending on the property. But yeah, you've got city, you've got beach, and then you've got mountains. Obviously, that's almost 100% lifestyle. That's more full end user versus investor, but it's nice. I mean, it's cooler, right? You come to Panama, it's tropics all year long.
Right, right. What about the special economic zones? I know that there are several in the country, and a couple of them are just within driving distance of Panama City.
Absolutely. No, yeah, you've got Panama Pacifico, which is just on the other side of the bridge. Was created by London and Regional and the Panamanian government 8-10 years ago. They've got a lot of incentives for multinationals, light industry, service-based. Those are interesting. And then you've got the free trade zone. I mean, Cologne, I think, is the second biggest free trade zone in the world, behind probably Hong Kong. I'm not an expert on free trade zones around the world, but that is also a big driver of the Panamanian business. That also, again, I don't want to put too much credence in the China story because it still hasn't played out yet, but it's sort of at the beginning stages. That could really be a tipping point for those special economic zones, particularly the free trade zones that the Panama government created many years ago. The free trade zone is from like the 1940s. Yeah, that's generally sort of the different areas of where people have invested in the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
An hour and a half radius of the city, we can
Sure. Well, I was very fortunate that I did a helicopter tour of real estate a couple of months ago, and a couple of observations, or a few observations. One is, when you're looking from the water, it looks like a packed city of tall buildings like Hong Kong or Singapore, New York. But when you look at it from above, there is a lot of room for growth. The buildings aren't really that tightly packed in, and in some of the zones, like I can't think of it. Is it Costa de Este?
Sure.
The would be the east side of the city. That's building up, but there's ample space for growth. But what surprised me is that we flew across the canal, and there is very little built on the north side of the North America side of the canal. And that's close to the beaches. I understand that it's a little too close to the canal and all the ships that are coming in just for the sake of ecology. But it seems like there's ample opportunity for quality living close to the beach in an area that is less developed. So hopefully that will, with the addition of the second bridge, that will create more expansion. But the general observation is, I felt like if I were to base myself in Panama, there is ample room to grow. And even though if I'm a big city person, I'll feel at home. If I'm not such a big city person, I'll feel at home as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, perfect. So let's step forward here. Can you address what are other benefits to buying real estate besides acquiring them as assets?
Well, I guess this could be perceived as a benefit, sort of the low cost, the low holding cost component. I mean, you've got property taxes. A lot of the buildings are either exonerated for property taxes for a certain amount of years based on how old and how much they're valued at. But once that exoneration expires, which it will, the property tax is anywhere from 0.06 to 0.08%. So, on a $1 million property, you're paying $8,000 a year. Homeowners association on that $1 million property, let's say it's 500 meters or about 5,500 square feet, you're probably looking at about another, $1,000 a month. So that's a holding cost consideration. And other benefits. I mean, foreigners have the same rights and protections as Panamanians when it comes to property ownership. I know that other countries sort of have different ways, freehold versus leasehold. Yeah, Panamanian makes no distinction. Panama makes no distinction between foreigners as property owners. Let's see what else.
How does it, like residency, for example, if I am establishing my residency, how can owning property, whether it's 1 or 10, be to my benefit?
You know, I mean, as a real estate guy, I would say, well, you should go after the small investor visa, which is 300,000, but you can get residency by friendly nations. The friendly nations visa, you don't need to buy any real estate. So that sort of addresses a bigger picture checkbox for a lot of our expats that are not relocated here by multinationals that choose to move here, is how easy the residency process is. I mean, Panama has been very open to foreigners. I mean, even path to citizenship, work permits, etc. It's very immigration friendly. I mean, I've had clients that get their cedula, which is their provisional residency, within like 6 months, and for $5,000, right? Or maybe a little bit more than that, depends on family members and et cetera, which visa they go after. But at the end of the day, that's huge, and that's what's put Panama on the map. And that's thanks to our last president, Ricardo Martinelli, who sort of identified that as a competitive advantage that we could create as a country in terms of its appeal for foreign residents to establish permanent residency here, to take advantage of a territorial tax regime that allows for living in Panama. You don't pay taxes if you're making your money from outside of Panama. It's as simple as that. I think very few countries have that. Also, we check other boxes. It's safe. I mean, of course, it's a big city, so you don't go walking around particular neighborhoods at night with a big old Nikon camera and your gold chains. Whatever. Your guys are savvy enough not to do that anyway. But at the end of the day, my wife will walk back from the park at 8 o'clock at night, and I don't fret about that, right? Like, just crime, knock on wood, has not been an issue. And with employment as it is, I don't see that. I mean, you never know, right? You don't have the crystal ball, but compared to countries like Costa Rica that have double-digit unemployment, petty crime is an issue. Brazil, forget about it. Like everybody, you go to a dinner party, and literally every single person at that dinner party has been mugged. Maybe not physically, but robbed. That, again, knock on wood, is not as big of a concern. It's not front and center on people's minds. Right. So that also is, I would say, an advantage, or at least a benefit of spending more time in Panama is safety is a non-factor. Connectability is also interesting. And again, if I'm veering off more into like sort of Panama general, we can try to steer back to.
Now we're doing great. I like stream of consciousness. Is it conscience or consciousness?
Consciousness, yeah.
Consciousness. What actually you just reminded me, this month, or actually we're now into May, but just a couple days ago, Gallup released a study of, and I can't remember the exact focus, but it's looking at how angry versus happy and content people are in the world. And do you know that Panama is currently ranked number 2 on the planet in terms of the positive, that people value their life and their quality of life?
Yeah. No, it's cool. So a caveat to that, or at least maybe a small explanation. But there's a lot of factors. So going back to doing due diligence and being aware of what's going on and asking the right questions. So you got your average person, let's call it a peasant is a terrible word. You got your average person living in Russia, right? A couple months out of the year, things are great. The next 9 months or 8 months or 7 months, you have some very, very harsh winters, right? In Panama, and you could die. If you don't have a job, if you don't have a way for income, you will die. Versus in Panama, you pick a mango, you go fishing. You will not die here. And that sounds like a funny, weird sort of comparison. But life in the tropics in an environment where there's not a whole lot of crime, where unemployment is pretty under control. You know, you don't, and the other thing is, like, and again, here we go, stream of consciousness, sorry, but that makes sense. Family orientation is huge here. Nobody does any work on Sunday, and even Saturday afternoons, you get a business call, you're like, what is this guy doing calling me? You know, on a Saturday afternoon, you get a pass. Sunday, no way. It's very family centric. So yeah, good news. I don't think that came across my radar. It might have. I saw something on social media.
I'll send it to you after the call. But I know I thought it was great. And you know, and a lot of our, not a lot, a number of our members either live full time or part time in Panama, or are in the process of doing so, and that's what inspired me to go to Panama and to explore. And I get it. I see why it's such a great place to live. But we have veered off of topic, so that's actually all very good, very good. Our listeners have the opportunity to come down in July and to experience it firsthand. Back to the questions here. Two loaded questions for you. First one is Panama real estate ripe for the picking?
I mean, yeah, like definitely it's a buyer's market, has been for the last year or two, which means that sellers are that much more stressed to sell. We do have an election coming up this Sunday, which could give sellers some renewed confidence, and maybe their businesses increase. So maybe you could say there's a bit of a window, but there's so many other factors that affect sellers and their motivation to sell. So yeah, no, I would say that it is an interesting time to start exploring Panama real estate. I don't think that prices are going to go through the roof in, 6 months. So I would encourage, this to be a first visit to test the waters, to get a sense of what's going on, to ask yourself what could go wrong, to talk to as many people as possible and their experiences, and really fish for the negative, because the positive's easy to get excited about and sort of, yeah. But no, it is. I mean, it's a buyer's market all day long. The fact that we're on the dollar means that you've got, less currency volatility to worry about per se. Depends on where you're based, et cetera. But yeah, so no, I mean, it is. You've got some. All
right. So next loaded question. Just a little background with Obras. When we're doing an event, we very carefully vet the people that we introduce our members and guests to. And I'm, with regard to Panama Equity and to you, Kent, I'm remembering an article that I read that you wrote, and I believe it's posted on your website, about things to watch out for in real estate. And the reason I reference all of that is that it's very important for us to have a real estate company that our members can go to when they're in the process of residency, or if they just are drawn to purchasing real estate for investment purposes. So in coming to you, you've come with great recommendations. 12 years in the business, you've probably earned a few gray hairs of seeing how some realtors and developers may function or try to function. So the question I have is, what words of caution and guidance would you offer to us? What have you seen that horrifies you in the industry?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you got a chance to see that. I called that article "Blood on the Streets." And yeah, I mean, it was sort of based on my experience, a lack of transparency, both with the buyers and the sellers. And people really don't know what they're looking at because there's such a lack of statistics, reporting, and resources to go to understand both the market and the process of acquiring and actually selling property. You want to have a quarterback that's managing all the affairs moving things forward, both again on the buy side and the sell side, and of course the property management. You have lawyers, for example, that just don't know better. They advise their clients to put a property under an SAA, which is a corporation, but they don't even advise on probate issues. What happens when you die? That asset could get tied up in probate for years. Put it in a foundation. That's just sort of little things that many attorneys don't even really speak to their clients on because they don't know any better. They don't go that far into the questioning of really understanding the client's needs. So you need somebody to kind of supervise that and sort of tidy up the loose ends, if you will. And yeah, I mean, that's what we do. So yeah, and there's other people that do what we do too. I'm not here to say that we're the only guys in town. I appreciate the vote of confidence and, have built my company around, sort of a different way of doing business. So yeah, I mean, just
I think integrity goes a long way in real estate. And I mean, we expect realtors to be shrewd, but we also expect that they're going to have our back whether we're buying one property or multiple properties. And I certainly get that impression from you. And I think Blood on the Streets is a great article worth reading. I'll see that we add that on to the podcast so that folks.
Sure. Thank you.
I just thought it's a good primer for anyone considering investing. So we're going to wrap up here in just a minute, but I want to just do before we close off. I know and we know that Panama Equity, your company, does at least two things. One is that you represent buyers and sellers in real estate, and two, you manage properties for can you give us an overview of what are the other components that make up Panama Equity and really what can you offer us as individuals or family offices?
Wow. I mean, you kind of covered our main, right? Like brokerage and property management. At the end of the day, it's who you're dealing with. Myself and the team I've built, we're 18 people, have an alignment towards relationship-based business versus transactional. The fiduciary responsibility to make decisions on behalf of your clients when you've been entrusted to do so. When it comes to, vetting providers, vetting tenants, overseeing works, creating systems of accountability, and just sort of just doing the basics, right? Like real estate is not rocket science. It's pretty simple. I mean, Panama has its eccentricities. The lack of transparency is something that we tried to address from the beginning with that Blood on the Streets document, which I've updated over the years through compiling of legitimate sources of information. The comptroller of the Republic, the superintendency of banks, folks that are gathering statistics that one could follow and start making some trend analysis on. Although, the very basic statistics of closed sales, we publish those and we compile those, but it's a small section of the market. So we've tried to address the eccentricities of Panama and just sort of do what a brokerage and property management agency should do around the world, which is, think long term and hire the right people.
Well, so just one last thought, and this is me surmising. You have a great pulse on the market, and a lot of people in the industry. You also know properties. Our investors are often drawn to asymmetrical type of opportunities where there's an opportunity to have exponential growth on an investment. And my guess is partnering up with you, there's the potential access to that, because I'm sure that you probably come across buyers or sellers that or property holders, owners that that want or need to sell for various reasons, or underserved areas for various reasons. So I would think that it would make sense to team up with you and your team for finding those types of opportunities. Is that fair? Yes or
Yeah,
no?
I mean that's what we do. You know, you gotta.
We will expect to dig deeper into that when we're together in Panama. So I think I'll tell you what, I'll give you opportunity if there's anything else that you want to add right now, and then I'll close this up here.
I'm good. No, thank
All
you.
right.
I appreciate it, James. It's nice spending time with you, and look forward to seeing you here in a couple months.
Oh, absolutely. Same here. And I truly appreciate your passion for real estate as well as for investing. And I think it's going to be a great asset for us to have you with us for the event. And just to give folks a recap on the event, OBRIS Global Investor Summit is July 15th to the 20th. And we're covering a number of topics. So a big part of it will be on Panama investment as well as establishing residency. Kent will be on hand for both of those, but Kent is also, he and his team will be with us for as much of the whole week as possible. So if you are inspired while you're with us to consider real estate, then Kent can hold your hand, or his team can hold your hand as well along the week. But it'll be just great to have your insights as we're out and about on rooftops and looking out at the city or near the water or wherever we may be. So anyway, Kent, this has been wonderful. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you very soon. And
Absolutely.
Thanks for your time today.
It's a pleasure.
If you are an accomplished investor, you will be in good company at our Panama Summit. Our members and guests are an amazing group of self-made and accomplished investors. They come from 15 countries and a wide variety of professions. We share the common pursuits of surrounding ourselves with great people in great places and gaining significant returns in investing. In addition to Panama investing, real estate and residency, we will dig deep into expanding our prowess as investors. We'll be covering topics such as fintech, how to make money in crypto in this day and age, and how to assess risk in investing around the world. We will also have a focus on longevity and healthy living. We have invited several physicians who are at the top of their field in regenerative medicine. Topics will be covered include the use of stem cells in regenerative medicine, as well as cannabinoids in regenerative medicine. Of course, we'll feast on the sights and sounds of Panama, amazing sunsets from rooftop bars, excursions to the canal and historic Panama, plus great restaurants, shops, and clubs. The bottom line is that if you have not been to an OBRIS event, this could be a game changer for you. My first ever event with OBRIS was more than 4 years ago in Auckland, New Zealand. I went as a guest and found myself surrounded by people with whom I could truly relate. Also people from whom I could learn a great deal about investing as well as other aspects of life. And a group of people that I've come to know as friends as well as business associates. You really have to experience OBRIS firsthand to grasp the full value. So join us from July 15th to 20th in Panama. We'll be in Panama City at the La Meridian Hotel as our base. Of course, we'll be out and about in the city and surrounding area. To register, and our registration is currently open for early bird registration, go to our website. Go to obrisinvest.com/Panama 2019. That's OBRIS invest.com/Panama 2019. Thanks for joining me this week. See you in Panama.